Iburu, Iboya, Ibucheche, everybody in Cyberland. Hey, is your favorite Bawalao? At least I hope so. Omodu, Modileke, coming at you with another great live. Hey, apologize, but I had some Ile work to do, so I've been kind of out of pocket for a little bit. I think the last video I actually made was on Juneteenth, right? And so I feel bad that I haven't been on here long. But it's time to get this party started again. And it's time for us to start moving and start getting into a projection, right? Where we can start to get really deep dive, right, into our studies, into our education, into the no kidding, what have I began. If you haven't seen my YouTube short, please look at the YouTube short on your Fair Babalao Institute, a 4-year curriculum at your pace and pre-recordings for those of you who want to kind of build towards, the classroom recording per se. But more importantly, just getting after the knowledge base, getting after what you all desire, right? Because if there's anything that I know, at least in my decades, right, of service, right, we'll say to the community within Ifá, within Ocha, right, whether we call it Santeria, whatever, is that something that's always lacking is that educational piece, right? It's always lacking, right? Everybody's quick to give divination. Everybody's quick to say, hey, receive an Orisha. Everybody's quick to jump in and become priests and priestesses. And no one understands the foundation, right? Which brings me to your favorite Babalao Institute, which again, if you have not seen it, it's going live. The first class, live sessions with me on Zoom, right? Every Thursday, right? All that information is there. And if it's not there, or if you have more questions, you got to let me know. You got to put, hey, some questions in the chat. You got to make sure that you shoot me an email. All my information is in the description, right? So make sure you get after it, right? But I am super excited to do the course. But now that I rambled, right? Let's get after it. Iburu, Iboya, Ibucheche, everybody in Cyberlands, your favorite Babalao, at least I hope so. Omoodun Odileke, right? Coming at you with this particular video, right? And coming at you live. So go ahead and pop the questions in there. But I find myself, wondering, and maybe I've just been doing this for so long, but I've never really had a moment of time where we began to speak on, hey, what is an Ifá consultation? Right? Think about it. What is an Ifá consultation? Just the structure alone on how the divination begins, how the divination is structured, how you get 3 signs, how you get a prophecy, how you get an embo, and the why, right? Think about it, right? And I think this is a very important topic because this is how we get to where we get, when we enter the faith or if we're just looking for advice. So I always like to start with the disclaimer, right? Every house does things differently, right? Divination is across the board always going to occur. Advice across the board is always going to occur. Oduns are always going to be casted by Bawalaos. Mire Dilogún is always going to be casted by Olorishas, Santeros, Santeras, right? And this is just part of how the faith is designed. But what is being communicated is the piece. And I'm going to talk to you today about the Ifá piece of it, because I think that is something that at the end of the day, we have a hard time kind of better understanding. Hey, Boro boy, Bucheche, Moyo, Lafia to you, many blessings. Hey, Boro boy, Bucheche. So I wanted to kind of talk to you about, Ifá divination, right? And Ifá divination, a lot of times, and my wife gives me a hard time because I don't like it when people call it readings, right? Whenever I hear readings, I think about, the tarot card readings. I think about, medium readings. I think about certain different things, right, that pop into my head. So I always give people a hard time. And I say, hey, this is not a reading. This is a divination. This is a consultation, right? Because we are getting the advice from Ifá to better communicate with you. But the other thing that people don't realize is that we are actually having a conversation with your Ori, right? which is a reason why, you are handed ebooks, or right, if the consultation is virtually, right, which I do most of my consultations virtually, you begin to kind of see that, we ask for personal information like your name and your mother's name and your dad's name, right, and your age, right, so that we could put those together so we can hone in and boom, get to your Ori. Right? So we ask these questions for the sake of that, right? Because here's the thing. Consultations in Ifa are known as Dapale or Dafa, right? A Dapale is when I use, right, Ingines, right? These are Ingines, right? Or, right, we use Inkings, right, which is a Dapa, right? Which is now what we talk about Inkines, right? So I say this to say that is probably the first thing you need to understand. What type of consultation am I getting? Is it in kings or is it in equile? Right? And that is primarily very important to understand. But as we kind of go through this, it's kind of understanding now that there is a sacred spiritual mechanic, right, that serves as a primary vector in a dialogue between you, the human, and the divine, right? Most importantly, through Orunmila, because Babalaos are priests of Orunmila. We're disciples of Orunmila, right? The Orisha of wisdom, the Orisha of destiny, and the reconstructor thereof of destiny, right? So this is a very foundational thing in the Yoruba cosmology of things and Lokumi practice, because I'm a Lokumi Babalao, right? Anchoring every action in divine alignment, which is Iwapale, right? Which is the gentle and the moral and the good character, right? That is necessary in order for us to flourish, right? So what is the meaning of the consultation? Well, Ifá consultation is a method of accessing, right, that metaphysical wisdom, which is encoded in the 256 Oduns. Hopefully that kind of makes sense, right? So with the guidance of Orunmila, under the governance, right, of the diviner, at this point it would be the Babala, right? Each consultation reveals oduns that reflect, right, current certain things, right? The current energetic, right, alignment of the person, the ancestral and spiritual forces that align with them, the karmic debts, blessings, and potential thereof, right? And the guidance and the warnings on how to maintain and restore the harmony, right? In essence, we talk a lot about the concepts of orishas, lenses in one's life, right? The Ori's perspective on what I guess incorporations are necessary in order to align someone to get to where they gotta get to. So hopefully that makes sense, right? And again, ask questions in the chat if you have questions, right? And I kind of go back and I remind everyone, this is a reason why, people ask me all the time, like, hey, why do you have an institute? You got a full-time job, you're a babalao full-time, you know what I mean? You're burning yourself out 200%. Well, it's because education is important. Understanding the why behind things is important. Things that I wish that I had more of coming up as an aleyo, as a new initiate, and as I was coming up as a babalao, right? Because not everything is sometimes handed to you. And sometimes we have to be able to ensure that we have the information necessary to get to where we got to get to, right? And understand what we're receiving, understand what we are doing. So, as I kind of gave you that idea of the meaning of the consultation, right? Something that I really want you guys to understand. If this is a consultation that you are receiving, right, because you just want to get a vector check, you want to make sure you're aligned, you want to make sure things are moving, right? I want you to analyze this in the same sense as the world turns, right? The moon has its cycles, the earth is rotating, we have a solar system, we're within a solar system within a universe, right? And those things matter because consultations, right, are snapshots in time. Right? And I always like to use the doctor analogy. When you go to the doctor, what does the doctor do? If you're doing a checkup, they do all your vitals, they do all your blood work, they may do x-rays, they may do 100 different things, right? And sometimes you get hurt and you go to the doctor, or you get seriously injured and you go to the doctor. And then they do the same thing, right? They repeat the process. Consultations and these checkups are very important, but again, they're a snapshot in time. Just because you broke your leg and now you got it fixed doesn't necessarily that means that that applies, right? Or that prescription or that advice now that your leg is healed is still relevant, right? And you have to look at it in that lens. This is the reason why a lot of consultations, Babalaos, we're told, hey, 16 days is when the shift begins. You have basically 16 to 21 days to adjust yourself, to take the medicine, to listen to the advice, alter your spiritual self in order for you to align to your physical self. And that's something that a lot of times people don't truly understand. This is the reason why certain people are hardcore. They get their consultations every 16 days, and it doesn't matter who they are, right? Consult doctors, consult lawyers, consult even pastors. It doesn't matter, right? Because Ifá doesn't care. Ifá is not biased to one thing. Ifá is religious tolerance. And that's another important piece that we always got to remember because we are all subject to the same will of God, right? And we need to understand our destiny and we need to understand how to better reconstruct or better remove or better reinforce. And that's important. So now let's talk a little bit more on the concepts of the Ikíns, the sacred palm nuts, right? Those sacred palm nuts, right? During full consultation or initiation, right? That is gonna always be an ita or itefa, right? And that has a very more stringent way of producing, what that consultation looks like, right? And a lot of times people go that route, but traditionally or typically we use the divining chain, the Òpèlè, right? And that's used for daily consultations, every 16-day consultations, right? And the reason why is because it's portable, it's quicker, it's effective in diagnosing spiritual conditions of life issues. And this is the reason why you begin to see that. The other thing that you begin to see, um, when it comes to different divination systems, right, within Ifá, you'll see something called Obiabong. Obiabong is the coconut, right? When it's broken up into four pieces, right? The white side up, the black side down, it is casted, right? It's used particularly for yes and no answers and confirmations, right? It's a direct communication with Orishas, right? It's direct communication with the messenger, Eshu, right? In order to ensure that we are traveling in that right direction, right? When it comes to certain topics or maybe certain offerings, making sure that we did everything properly. So there's always going to be that level of understanding and that level of direct communication that I want you to also be exposed to so that you have a better understanding. Obviously, I talked about the Dilogún earlier, and the Dilogún is something that's housed by the Babalochas, the Iyalochas, Santeros, Santeras, right? However way you want to look at it, but they're Olorishas, right? So they are crown priests and priestesses, right, of the Orishas, right? And they use Dilogún. They use shells, right? And they're shells that are pretty typical. Let's see if I have. No, I don't have any shells to kind of give you an example like I had the Kings or the Equilis. But those are gonna be things that we gotta kind of understand as well. Hey, Shanti, Boy Abucheche, good to see you on here. But they also, right, reflect, right, the Orisha's voice. This is the reason why the Dilogún shells are considered the mouthpiece, right, of the Orisha. Right? So we can also dissect those things. Something about this particular consultation is it's not done, and Lukumi Babalaos do not consult with horror shows. Right? This is a big foul. This is something that if you see happening within a Babalao, especially within Lukumi traditions, you need to throw the red flag up and say, wait a minute, right? And I would honestly tell you that I know I say that, then you just sometimes do things differently, but that's a red flag, 100%. Don't pass go, don't collect $200, right? Monopoly. But that's something you got to be careful about. We got people that are doing crazy things nowadays. Why? Because they jump on social media, they get an idea and they run with it, right? And they think that what right looks like, or people are maybe just untrained, right? Or maybe they're just faking the funk and they're wolves in sheep's clothing, right? And you got to be careful with these things. All right, let's dig deeper. Let's dig deeper. What is the purpose of a consultation? Right? I gave you the analogy, right, of the doctor and the patient. Now I'm going to give it to you a little bit more extended. You go to the doctor for a specific reason. He does his exams, his tests, and whatnot, right? And what does he do? He comes back and he gives you the results. Hey, the blood work says this, the x ray says this. This is what you got to do. This is how you're going to prevent X, Y, and Z. He gives you all this good data, right? Okay. And then he says, here's a prescription, take it to Walgreens or CVS or wherever you get your pharmacy meds from, right? And get after it, right? Same process, right? I'll give you an example. In Ifá, I cast 3 signs. Those 3 signs, right, is my examination. The prophecy reinforces the examination of those 3 signs, those 3 Odù, right? And then what do? I say, well, Ifá gives you advice, pa, 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 and hey, now these eboses come out and pa, 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 that's the medicine. Right? No different than what a doctor would do, right? So whether it's your annual checkup or whether something particular happened to you, you broke a leg, you broke an arm, you got to look at that, right? And this is the reason why this is important to understand because consultations fulfill both a spiritual and a practical role. A physical and spiritual come together and they meet up, and now you create greatness, right? So again, yeah. If you guys have any questions, put it in the chat. I don't think you can put it in the chat unless you subscribe, but feel free to do so. Um, Orunmila, right? When we talk about destiny alignment, when we talk about Ori Inu, right? We talk about Orunmila and the Babalaos doing consultations. And as disciples of Orunmila, we understand that Orunmila is the Elérìí Ipín, the witness to faith, the witness to creation. Right? And only through Ifá can one access their Orinu. Going back to what I said earlier, right? I'm getting all this data from you, or I'm having you manipulate different things that are called Ibos. I show you an example, Ibo, right? That's Ibos, right? So either the rock, right? Or you got the shell, or you got, and typically this is what you see in the Lukumi tradition is we have the rock and we have the shell, right? And this is what we tell you to shake, and we tell you to split it up, we do all these things. Anyway, but that direct connection, nonetheless, right, is our way of better communicating with Orinu, right? Or we say, I need a lot of personal information, your age, your mom's name, your dad's name, and I need to better understand this. If you have hand of Ifá, what's your Awofaka, what's your Ikofa sign, who's your guardian Orisha, because then boom, now I got you, right? And that's your Orinu that I'm trying to communicate with, that I'm trying to align with, right? In order to diagnose this either this energetic imbalance or reinforce an energetic alignment that you have. Think about it, right? So now you understand. In a numerology sense, right? We understand you have 256 Oduns, right? Which are binary codes, right? Because Odu stands for the womb of life, the womb of creation. Odu, 256 of them that hold all the esoteric truths, almost like a DNA patterns, right? Of cause, effect, transformation, right? And when you look at it, you look at it from a cosmological sense, right? The Oduns are records of every human experience, ancestral path, divine decree, right? From Orun, the spiritual realm, to Aye, right? Earth. So when you look at it, you say, okay, well, consultations track the energy fields of a person, a family, a space. They identify the stagnation, the inversion, the amplification of something called Ache, right? A divine blessing, right? So then when you look at it in that sense, you say, oh, okay, I think I get it. I think I understand. So now you start to kind of say, okay, what is, the consultation truly trying to get to? So now we could dig even deeper and we say, okay, well, consultations distinguish between temporary setbacks, right, and faded conditions, right? So if the consultation is to distinguish between these two set things, right, then we are need to do what? We need to begin to analyze that and get to the solution, the prescription, right? The ebo, right? And ebos are to correct those imbalances, right? That prescription that the doctor gives you to reestablish the alignment with Ori, with the eguns, right? The Orishas. The ebo is to restore the flow of Ire, the blessings, right? Whether that blessing may be Aiku, long life, whether it may be Ire Owo, wealth, prosperity. It can be Ire Ife, right? Which is love. It can be Ire Ache, spiritual power. It can be an array of Ires and blessings, right? But what we're trying to counteract is that Osogbo, that misfortune, right? Of Arum, which is sickness, Igu, which is death, Ofun, which is losses, Epe, the curses and whatnot, that gets diagnosed. And this is the reason why a bowl has to happen. A bowl is super important because your Ori would have never guided you, right, to a consultation if any of that was not valid and any of that wasn't necessarily, important. So, that leads me to my next point, right? Which is, why even receive a consultation if you're not even willing to better understand where that consultation is going to take you? In the Odù of Ifá and Ogundache, if we talk about the sacred word of Orunmila, right? And the offensive nature of why did you get a consultation if you're not going to listen to the advice or you're not going to do the above? Might as well not even get it, right? So those type of things are important to understand as we try to kind of maneuver where the faith is going, right? And where your spiritual alignment is going. Again, people ask, why are you starting your favorite Babalawo Institute? Right? Because think about everything that I have said thus far, right? The reason why I built a curriculum, the reason why I posted that curriculum and I want people to join, right? The reason why those that have subscribed to certain packages, right, in the membership of this live, I'm going to give you the first month, 4 sessions live starting in July. You just got to email me, right? So if you got this far of the video, you got to email me. Hey, I'm a member. I'm in the priest and priestess, membership, right? Put me in, coach. I'm in there like swimwear. You know what? For anybody who is a member, doesn't matter what package you pick, I'm going to add you starting the July 17th, Thursdays. If I remember my dates correct, let me check my dates. But I'm pretty sure, yeah, July 17th, right? We're going to start classes, right? 1 hour sessions live on Zoom, right? Between me, student interaction, and we're going to get after some of those deep questions and learn what is the Yoruba cosmology. And we're going to, everything that I'm talking through now, we're going to build upon it. It's going to be great, right? And it's going to be all pre-recorded anyway. So in case you want to go as you go, right? Whether it's live or whether it's pre-recorded, I got you. So now let's talk a little bit more. Consultations. Why and when consultations are important. The consultation guide, right, is to guide you through decisions, major decisions. Maybe I want to get married. Maybe I want to open up a business. Maybe my health is deteriorating. I need to get better. Maybe I need to work on relocation. Maybe I want to have a child or I'm childbearing, right? Maybe there's ancestral work that needs to be done. Maybe there's major transitions in my life. Right? Well, that's why Orunmila reveals when to act, what to avoid, and what offerings have to be made in order for you to get into a rhythm, right, that is spiritually aligned with what you need. And then those things are important. Right? A couple of things that I would mention is that in the Odù Ejiogbe, right, that's the origin of the consultations. That is the beginning of all things. That is the one that speaks about organization. And there's an old saying in Oshe, right, that speaks about Orunmila ni odi elese mesi. Consultations originate in the Odun with the establishment of an Ita, 3 signs, right? And the Itefa ceremony, which many know as, something that we do for hand of Ifá, receiving your Awofaka, your Ikofa. Ejiogbe is where the Odun revelation begins, right? Where the Ita begins, where Olokun and Adeshina, right, are born, right? It commands the force of reparation, right? I guess is the right word I would use, and light, right? So that the very breath of consultations takes action, right? And then when you dump into even Irosun, right, in Irosun Meji, we talk about that it is through consultations that we know who is deceitful. Right? It emphasizes, in that sense, that proverb in Irosun Meji, that, the truth revealing nature is Ifá. To understand where things are going is through Ifá, which is the reason why, even in Ogundache, we talk about the sacred word of Orunmila. Right? When you look at Irete Otura, it highlights the consequences of ignoring consultations, especially with regards to family matters, health, prosperity, and stability. Right? And those things are important for us to remember. So I wanted to share this for a couple of reasons. Right? I wanted to kind of just bring this all together. Why? Because at the end of the day, there's something that I kind of constantly see and I hear. Right? And there's these frequently asked questions, right? People shoot me emails, and you are all welcome to shoot me emails. If you don't have my email, right, I'm actually going to put it in the chat, right? So you have it. Shoot me emails. Let me know what you're thinking. Let me know if you have a question, right? But some people ask, and especially those who are new to the faith, right, they will ask me, hey, what's the point of the consultation? How often should I do the consultation? Hey, this is my first time doing a consultation. What should I know? What should I do? And me explaining it through this video, I think clears things up. It allows you to kind of see the truth in the matter. It allows you to educate yourself and to empower yourself to see when is it that you need something and when is it that you don't. Again, the common theme is people do consultations every 16 days. I always like to tell people, listen, 16 days, I get it, but money doesn't grow on trees, right? And you're not getting free consultations, right? So we got to be methodical about this, right? So if you know you did a consultation, at least wait a month, right? If things are still flowing and you feel that you're spiritually aligned and you are doing everything you need to do, then maybe you wait every 2 months, right? And those are things that you need to kind of analyze, right? Now, for those of you who have Ikofa and Awofaka, another point that I will bring is that remember that your Awofaka or your Ikofa, the Odun that you had when you did Hand of Ifa, that is your foundation to it all. Everything else are pillars on top of that foundation. But that foundation has to be strong, right? If your foundation ain't strong when you're building a house or a building or something like that, right, it's going to fall. It's going to deteriorate. It's going to break. You're going to have to repair it. So I won't tell you that any differently, right? I will tell you, understand that because that's the foundation. And then you can add the consultations on there. And then you can add the consecrations of other Orishas and their advice on top of it, right? But nonetheless, you're going to have to lump all that up together, right? So it's important for you to know yourself, right? Another reason why people ask, hey, why do you do papers on Ikofa and Awofaka, right? Why do you put that on your website for people to purchase? Why do you put that, because I'm very much invested in your spiritual development. Not just because I jump on YouTube and try to teach as much as I can, but no, it takes me to do one paper, it takes me weeks. Because what I do is I take your oduns, I take your prophecy, I take as much data as you can give me, which I sometimes think is pretty sad that not everybody has their full consultation or their full ita, right? The three signs of prophecy. Because I think you don't have a full sight picture, right? And then for folks that leave spiritual homes or their godfather passes away or whatever occurred, right? So word of the wise, right? If that becomes you one day and you need to receive your hand of Ifá and you receive it, try to make sure that you get all three signs. Try to make sure you get your prophecy, your guardian Orisha. And even then, try to get as much data as you can out of the situation, right? So then that way you understand your foundation even more, right? So especially when I'm drafting papers, if I have the more information I have, the more I'm able to condense everything, put it in the blender, let it mix up, and boom, guess what you get? You get this beautiful story of your destiny. Nobody else's. That's your destiny. And I'm not talking about a destiny that you're going to pick up and you're going to go to Dr. Google or you're going to go to whatever large language model AI you have and you're going to say, hey, tell me about Odileke. And you get all this. No, 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 no. It doesn't work like that. The Oduns are particularly interpreted by Baalaos in a certain sequence and order with the prophecy in order to give you some solid advice. And that is something that you're always going to need to know. Right? So that's something that's important. Oh, Shanti, yes. Everybody understands their first sign. Hey, you're Odileke. Hey, you're Ejiogbe. Hey, you're Irosun Meji. Hey, you're this, that, and the other. That is called your Toyale, Shanti. So yes. But a lot of people don't understand that your Toyale is accompanied by an Okuta, the second sign, the first witness. And then it's accompanied by a third sign, which is your Tomala, which is your second witness. And they each play a function along with your prophecy, right? And those are the deeper things. I think I find myself at times, and I've done this for several people, where now we have to repeat the Ita. Not that you got to go through the full ceremony again, but we bring down Ifá. We do the bow with a tablero, which is called the Opun Ifá. Give you an example of one, right? This is an example on Opun Ifá, right? And we have to open up with Ifá again. We have to mark the information that we have, right? And then we have to be able to go ahead and now pull those two signs out again with the prophecy, because a lot of times people don't have all the data, right? And I would tell you that people who have transferred into my spiritual house, you know what I mean? They're now part of the family. I don't want to shortchange them. So guess what I'm going to do? I'm going to pull the other two signs. I'm going to pull out the prophecy. I need to understand them so they can better understand themselves, right? And I draft them up paperwork, no different than the ones that I have on my website to purchase so that they have the strong foundation. So that now you can build upon it, right? Now you can build upon it more effectively, right? So that's Ifá divination, right? That's Ifá and hand of Ifá. Those are three Oduns that you get. That's your prophecy. So food for thought. Hey, Bodo Boy Bucheche, David, good to see you on here. I only know Osaobe, Osarafobeo, Piriti Piriti, the spiritual consultations, right? That's what Ifá talks about in Osaobe. But how effective, Shanti, would it be if you had Osarafobeo? And how is Osarafobeo reinforced? And how are the solutions to your problems and how you grow into your destined path? Now we're talking about a full picture. Osarafobeo, piriti piriti. Good on you. Spiritual person, strong connections to Eguns, Mafarafung Eshu. You could talk about that all day, but we're missing things, right? And that's the key. That's the key to it all, right? To making sure that we have a full picture. But don't worry, Shanti, and for anybody else who doesn't have their three signs, those things that can be reproduced, right? Now, the Toyale is important. The Toyale, your first sign, is very important to know. Your guardian Orisha is very important to know, and those are not things that we will repeat. But how to reinforce that Toyale, that with that Okuta and that Tomala, that first witness, the second witness, we have to have it, and we got to see how that interacts, and those are important to have. Numejis receive multiple Oduns as well when receiving hand of Orunmila. Ay, Boroboya, Ochun Foke, Munde, Alara. Boroboya, Bucheche to you, Ikaro. So Fortuna, I'm gonna tell you like this. Everybody gets a Toyale, right? And there is going to be those moments, right, when a Meji comes out. But when a Meji comes out, that's one thing. When a Meji comes out on your second sign, the Okuta, let's say it came out Ejiogbe, the first Odun, the beginning of things and the end of things, then we will not throw a third sign. That is okay. You will see where some people have 2 signs and some people have 3 signs. That is okay. Boya. Okay. No, good. All right. Teammates, my spiritual Elan YouTube land. I was just finishing that side of here. Hey, that's funny. Omode alara, piriti, orun. All right. Hey, so here's the other thing. And I guess I'll close with this unless anybody has questions. Right, put it in the chat now because there's a small delay between what I have on YouTube. That's why I look on this screen, and then I look at the chat that's on this screen, right? And so my screen is split. But I will finish with this, right? Consultations is not just about seeking advice, right? It's about aligning your divine design. It's a blueprint, right? And sometimes we got to alter the blueprint based on what's going on with the structure of the building or the house. Think about it like that, right? So through consultation, one knows their ipin, their destiny. Through consultation, one knows to fulfill their iwa, their character, the changes, what we call Ifá Inu. We tell people all the time, if you just listen to the advice of the consultation, that's the majority of the book. The other stuff, the mechanics, beautiful. They reinforce, but they go hand in hand. One doesn't complement without the other, right? So one knows what the Orisha, right, and the ancestors require for elevation. That's the other piece of that. Right? So no decision of importance should ever be made without Ifá, right? The Ori, the Eguns, the Orishas, they all consulted Ifá at one point in time. The cosmic witnesses, right, to your life path is the same one that the Orishas had also followed, right? To consult, again, is to be in rhythm with creation, with the universe, with Aye. And I think that's important for us to always understand. You know what I mean? So just food for thought as we kind of transition through this. Again, a main reason why I love to understand at the end of it all, you know, why I created an institute. So teach something as simple as a consultation, which this is just the frosting of the cake, believe it or not, right? Needs to be learned by our culture, by our tradition, so that we can better educate those going forward. I hope that many of you come to the Institute. Hopefully, many of you email me. My email is in the chat. Hopefully, many of you already know how to get to the Institute because you saw my YouTube short. Look at the YouTube short if you have not, right? This is going to be a game changer. Someone that is English speaking, right? That's bilingual because I speak Spanish as well, that understands the traditions, right? At a deep, deep depth, right? That was taught by many elders and I continuously call elders, right? And getting into a curriculum or a rhythm. It's more than just YouTube and trying to gain knowledge from it, but it's having a one-on-one interaction on curriculum, a set objectives, a set, performance where we're trying to get at, and to conclude with lesson plans and handouts and to have an actual curriculum that's like academia. That's what my dream is. That's what my dream has always been. My goal is to retire in a couple of years from my full-time job, right? And do that and be a teacher. I want to instruct, right? And I want to teach each and every one of you. So hopefully you guys had something, and I addressed the big question of why Ifá consultation? Why Ifá consultation is life? What is the meaning? And those things are important. So studying Osode Meji Odù now. Well, Marcus, let me ask you this, only because I'm curious. Are you a Bawalao? And then I'm going to ask, Moyo asked a question. I'm confused about what is the significance of knowing the road and path of your Elegua, and how does it impact you? Beautiful question, Moyo. I'm going to answer your question, and I'm going to wait for the feedback on Marcus because I'm kind of curious about why he told me that. And not here to give you a hard time, Marcus. I want to make sure that we're all learning together. So there's a reason why I asked you the question. So you're confused about knowing the road and path. So you're Elegua. Let me explain this in two senses and two mindsets, right? So when you consecrate an Ifá within Lukumi, right? And I'm only going to speak on Lukumi. I'm knowledgeable on Isheshe, but I don't feel as appropriate as that is not my lineage, right? So in Lukumi, you receive an issue, right? And I don't know if you're talking about that issue or if you're literally talking about the rock, Elegua, that's given to you in the land of Ocha, right? Two different things. Nonetheless, when Babalaos consecrate your issue, right, we have to understand that everything and the secrets and everything that we did is aligning with you because you have a specific issue. Many times people have issue or data. Many times I see people with issue a lot of times in order to bring in prosperity. For the most part, those two issues are the ones that I see the most. The ones that I build, I will tell you, I go through a process, right? You got to take the person's information. You got to figure out if you're building it and how you're building it. Does it align with the person? And boom, now we have an issue, right? And we understand that path of that issue because that's the issue that walks with you. That's the issue that's very vital to your destiny, to your paths being open, but it occurs through a different path of issue. Another reason why people say, hey, why are you creating paperwork on issues? Well, because people have issues and sometimes they have the paths and they don't know what the path means. They don't know how to attend it. They don't know. And it's the I don't know factor. Again, the reason why I have an institute, the reason why I'm starting these classes on July 17th, and I'm holding these curriculums for 4 years straight, right? It's because of that. You have to understand that portion. Now, that's the Ifá portion. Elegua portion. When you receive an Elegua and Ocha, right, and you become crowned, that Elegua has a path, right? And there's times where they'll pull the Elegua path when they give you warriors and Ocha. Ocha has their form of warriors as well, right? And that path of Elegua is the same thing. It's how does it help guide you in this land of Aye, on this earth, right? Remember, when we talk Ifá, we're talking celestial down to terrestrial, right? And through the land of Orun, the spiritual realm. When we talk Ocha, we're talking about the land of the terrestrial, this earth that we are on, to the land of the Eguns, right? So we talk about two different paths. So that Elegua that comes from Ocha is going to be an Elegua that speaks on the terrestrial terrain, right? And how it complements the other Orishas. The issue, it's important to understand that path because it tells you how you complement your Ita and your hand of Ifá, and how it connects to you in the spiritual realm, both celestially and the spiritual side, right? When we talk about eguns and ancestors, right? So just to kind of give you a distinction of the two, but Eshu and Elegua are actually of the same pedigree. Eshu is a celestial being. When God created light, it was through the darkness. That darkness was Eshu. Eshu always resided and understands all paths. When Eshu had to begin to manifest and begin to to manipulate within the land of Aye. And when I say manipulate, not in a bad way, but evolution is important and teaching people lessons is important for them to evolve, right? That portion there now became Elegba or Elegua, right? And that's why we start to see the distinctions between the two. Another reason why it's important for us to have education. Another reason why the Institute, I'm pushing this Institute hard. I wish everybody was educated. Anybody who's touched the faith, at least within the Lukumi lineage, hey, please just join. Just do it. Just do it. At least try it out, right? At least for those who are members of the YouTube channel, hey, you got a month on me, right? You got 4 sessions on me. Okay. Now, let's see if I can better. What other questions we got here? Could you share the link, how to sign up for membership on YouTube? I'm having trouble finding it on a mobile. So when you open up YouTube, right, just so I can kind of give you an idea, let me see if I can pull it up here. Yeah, when you open it up on YouTube, and I don't know how it looks like when you are on, let's see. Let's see if I can. Yeah, there's going to be a subscribe, right? Or there's going to be a join membership, right? That's going to be right at that same tab, right next to subscribe, right? And it'll say join the channel or something like that. So if you see something like that, spot on, spot on. Hopefully that helps you. If anybody else has any advice, please put it in the chat. Let's help out our fellow sister, right? That's important. So Shantia, hopefully that's helped. If you continue to have problems, shoot me an email. We'll walk you through it, or I'll manually add you somehow. We'll figure it out together. Can you speak on Ogundache? Oh, what do you want to know about Ogundache? But yes, I can speak on Ogundache. Let me see if I got an easier or a not so a long Ogundache explanation, because that's a long explanation. Let me see if I got anything else in the chat. But I got you. I'm gonna talk to you right now. Okay, Foke? Fortune Foke. No, Child of Obatala. Ah, it came up in a reading I got from my Iya. Oh. So when you said you were looking at Osameji, you were talking about Osa Tonti Osa. Just to confirm. Mire de Legun, Ifá. 2 different oracle systems, 2 different explanations, which brings me to my next point, if that's true or not, but let me know. But this is good that you brought it up, because now we can talk more about it. When it comes to Mire de Legun and Ifá, a lot of times I find that we have Olorisha speaking Ifá, and that's not necessarily true. Remember, Ifá looks at things from a different optic, where Ocha is looking at a different optic as well. I just explained that with celestial and the terrestrial example with Eshu Elewa, right? So we got to be very careful not to use Ifá to interpret what came out in Mire de Legun. So Buruboya, hopefully that makes sense. So food for thought there, okay? Again, I'm not sure if that's what happened, but be very careful. The other reason I want to tell you this, and I guess I'll make this simple before I jump into Ogundache, because somebody asked me about Ogundache, is when we talk about, Oduns, I can talk very generically. Remember, I just told you guys, there's 3 signs to an Ita. There's a prophecy, there's a guardian Orisha. All that gets put in a blender, and a Babalao has to be able to give you the proper advice. It's not just let me look at an Odun and I see all the advice. Some of that advice doesn't even apply to you, because the other 2 witnesses told me it doesn't apply to you. Some of those solutions may not necessarily be solutions, because the 2 witnesses of the prophecy told me it wasn't true. This is the reason why Babalaos put it bosses, and we have to mark it bosses in order to find the solutions and the prescriptions that are necessary. Hopefully that makes sense, and this is the reason why I like to tell you guys this. Why? Because we're in the information age. Everybody has script and academia, everybody has AI, and everybody thinks they truly understand, or they got a good grasp on how to circumvent, right? Or maybe you're trying to self-teach yourself, you know what I mean? Which is very admirable. Don't get me wrong, very honorable. But more importantly, I don't want anybody to feel misled. There's Oduns out there that'll say Iku is at your door, death is at your door, death is coming for you. And you see people freak out. I got death at my door. What am I gonna do? And that's not something I want you guys to do because maybe that doesn't apply. Oh, my spouse is cheating on me because this Odun says so. No, maybe it doesn't apply. This is the reason why you truly pay a Bawalao to give you an in-depth consultation in order for you to truly understand where you're going and how you're getting back there. If that makes sense. Odù Meji, Buruboya. I can't always find it on my phone. I usually have to go to my computer to see memberships. Oh, there you go. So for who asked me about memberships, it was on Shanti. It looks like maybe a computer is the best way to go, right? For that. Duramei, blessing my guy, was wondering, I'm learning my maze from right to left and wanted to know what comes after. When you say you're learning your Mejis from right to left, Otura Meji, I'm assuming you're a Babalao, right? If so, what I don't want to do is start to kind of go into this process of breaking down how a Babalao needs to study, and I don't want to interfere with other lineages and their teachings, right? But hey, do me a favor, send me an email or send me an email with your phone number and I can better explain, especially if you're a Babalao. I want to help you. I'm all in 100%, brother. 100% to help any Babalao because, again, Ogunda Masa tells us one brother has to help another. One hand has to wash the other. So I got your back. Okay. Any advice for Iho? Where I got? Thank you, boss man. No, I got your back, brother. I got your back. Otura Meji. And what a beautiful sign. Otura Meji. Salam alaikum, alaikum salam, nangari nyari famale. The reason why we do nangareo for your ita, before you do your ita. For food for thought. Okay. Let's see. Any words on Odù pulled on the continent of the year? It was Otrupo Meji. Gratitude, Marcus. Let me see. Make sure I'm not skipping around here. Oh, yes. Any advice for an Hijo de Ogun and Ogunda Meji? Fortuna, you gotta let me know. Are you Ikofa, Awofaka, right? Are you crowned? Are you a Babalao? All those things begin to help me analyze, right? Again, it's not that simple. It's not that simple. I do have advice with the limited information that I have, but give me the rest of that information and I'm going to give you more. Okay. Hey, Ochunfuke, we appreciate you, brother. Buro boy, bucheche. Hey, thank you for the donation. Hey, a lot of you guys don't know. So what I do with the donations, and what I'm building towards is a pot of money, to do scholarships, right? For those who can't afford Mano de Orula, can't afford, their warriors, different things, because we have a lot of people that are struggling. Poverty is real, and our faith, gravitates to a minority base, and sometimes a little bit harder, right? Because not everybody has it like that. And I'm trying to establish, right, with the institute and everything else. A lot of times people say, man, you charge for this, that, and the other. Well, I'm trying to get something off the ground. And it's making sure that I can take care of those people because they need just as much love as anybody else. Right? They need to understand things just like anybody else. That way, we're not necessarily shortchanging and trying to, invent things and work around things. And those things are not always very effective. I think, we need to stick to a structure. We need to stick to tradition and let people receive hand of Ifá the way they need to receive it, right? And if they can earn it through a scholarship or something like that, let's do it, right? So I appreciate that 100%. Let's see. So Fortuna. All right, before I jump into Fortuna, because that's going to be another deeper one, somebody told me about Ogundache. Ochunfoke. All right, let's get to you, my friend. Hey, so Ogundache. Ogundache, I mentioned it earlier today, right? And I want to make sure you said Ogundache, right? You said Ogundache? Where you at? Where you at? There you are. Ogundache or Ogunda Oshe, right, is a sign. It's the sacred word of Orunmila. Right? This is an Odun that says that the person receiving Orunmila, Ochun, or Ogun, right? needs to always, always align themselves with Ifá. No if, ands, or buts. That is the key, right? So that's the first advice that I have for you, right? Now, everybody with Ogundache needs to align with Ifá, but specifically, Orunmila says if you're a son or a daughter of Ochun or Ogun, this is necessary. Something else that I would say. In Ogundache, not that you will go through this, not that I'm saying that you are this. I'm not, remember, limited information means that I have to be able to give you limited data, right? Without having the full picture. Ogundache speaks about the sacred word of Orunmila that means that all things will always result to be true. If you get a consultation and it tells you X, Y, and Z, and you outside of your window, one way, shape, or form, Orunmila will collect. And Orunmila is not really the one collecting, it's Eshu that's watching, observing, saying, hey, oh, they heard the advice, they didn't listen to the advice, they came to Ifá for the advice, so therefore I'm going to play this out. But I'm going to do it at such an opportune time. Maybe not today, maybe not tomorrow, maybe not this year, maybe next year. But because they didn't follow the advice, I'm going to wait to ensure that the lesson that they learn gets them back into the destiny that they need to be on. So Eshu takes that on. Eshu and Orunmila are one, BFFs. So something to think about, right? With Ogundache. Ogundache is a very sacred sign to Ifá, right? And they must always be on top of Ifá, their consultations, their consecrations, the ebos and their signs, the ebo that you got in your Ita when you received your Awofaka or your Ifofa. All those things are super important in Ogundache. Ogundache is also a sign here where you got to be careful because you are a very, very spiritual person. You're a person that has a lot of alignment, right? Once you're aligned, you have a lot of potential to be great. So with greatness comes the haters, the discrimination. And in Ogundache, we see that here, where people begin to discriminate on you for one reason or another. Right. So you got to be careful with that and you got to avoid those things off. So that's why a lot of times you receive Orisha Oya is told to get washed, to get consecrated for you so that you have. Why? Because Oya is the mistress of the mass. Oya is a divinity that ports all the eguns, the marketplace, and understands the ins and outs. Right. And so that's why in Ogundache, Oya is very sacred in the sign, but not just Oya. Right? There's a lot of Orisha that speak in Ogundache to include Olofin, right? Orunmila, Yalolde, Ochun, Ogun, Eshu, Babaluaye, Changonoya. Speaking of Ogundache, right? And that's just to name the principles. Okay? Obviously, there's going to be more that come along. In addition, when they talk about Ogundache, we talk about the Guanaldo ceremony that priests and priestesses have to undertake in order to be authorized to use a knife to sacrifice. What does that mean? That means that your Odù not only houses that ceremony, but it also tells you the responsibility that Ogundache has in this world. The responsibility that it even levies on the priests and priestesses. Ogundache is a great sign of greatness and potential to get to where they got to get to. But Ogundache has a flaw. Ogundache has a flaw with arrogance. Ogundache, this is an Odù where a person that gets Ogundache, right, in, let's say, hand of Ifá, this probably needs to go be a Babala, right? My 2 cents on it, right? And I have a lot of data to support that. In addition, Ogundache, if you're a Babalao, you are very close to, you need to receive Olofin, Odù, okay? But your arrogance in Ogundache is going to get you. Ogundache is a famous pataki when the king didn't want to bow his head to Olodumare, didn't want to bow his head to Orunmila, right? And because of it, his kingdom began to fail. He went back to Orunmila for help. But as he was going into the home, one of the key things he said in the beginning when he didn't want to bow is that I am a king and I bow my head to no one. My crown will never tip over. Okay. But now that he was in trouble, he tries to go to Orumila's house, who's on top of the hill. And when he tries to go into the doorway frame is too small. He has to bow his head to get into the house of Orunmila. But because he was so arrogant, he tried not to bow down his head or not, ended up hitting the door frame and his crown went rolling down. Eshu taught him a valuable lesson. The sacred word of Orunmila will always occur. Your crown will fall. You will bow your head, one way, shape, or form. Right? So those type of things and those pataki, there's a longer pataki, and there's a moral to that story, right? That goes deeper, but not to get too deep in that. That's why something you gotta kind of remember. Ogundache, something to remember is the misinterpretations. You can't misinterpret too many things, or better yet, analyze, understand the knowledge, understand what's going on before you can impart an interpretation to a scenario. You cannot jump the gun and you cannot be a 0 to 100 person. You got to walk, very, very calmly as you go through situations, right? That's important. If you're a woman, right, this is a sign with the menstrual cycle is strong, right? And you got to make sure that you monitor your ovaries. You got to monitor your cycles. You got to make sure that you're doing things properly, especially if you feel like you're going to be childbearing, etc. Those things are important in Ogundache. Because Ogundache talks about tumors. For women, it talks about the breast cancers and stuff like that. That's why it's important in Ogundache that you get yourself checked out. Things to remember. Things to remember. Okay. Okay. Where did I leave off here now? Oh, you guys got me going now. Ooh, you guys got me here for an hour already. That's crazy. Where did I leave off? Thank you for that. Any advice on Odù Ogún Meji? Let's see. Fortuna, did you reply back to that one? Ifá so far via Ita. Okay, so you received your hand of Ifá. No, Boroboya, Ochun. Okay. My pleasure. When we talk about Ogunda Meji and we talk about son of Ogun in Awofaka, right? In Awofaka. Remember, limited details. There's a lot more to this, right? We talk about the creation of steel, the art of war, where iron was first used for many different things, right? We talk specifically about the umbilical cord when it was first cut, right, by a sacred object or a sharp object, right? And we all understand this. We all went through this, right? So what does that mean? That means that Ogunda Meji is responsible for releasing the energy of Ori, the human body, into this world. And if you remember, when you came out of the womb or you had a C-section, it doesn't matter. Blood was offered to Aye. Blood hit the ground. The knife was used and Ogun was there to use it. Because Ogun is the iron. Ogun is the metal. Right? Think about Ogunda Meji and your responsibility as a son of Ogun. Right? So what does that mean to you? That means that something you always got to remember is that the knife has no loyalty. The knife is constantly always going to see the first target, stab where the direction is going, and it'll always get you. Right? This is the reason why we talk about in Ogunda Meji that you got to be very careful, right, with violence or having sharp objects or anything that can harm others through the sense of metal. So swords, knives, a gun, right? So all those things play massive roles in your life, and you have to be very careful with that. Right now, Ogunda Meji with a son of Ogun, depending if you came out in Irete or Osogbo, also changes the factors 100%. And what type of Irete and what type of Osogbo also plays a massive factor. But Ogun gives a lot of luck in this side, especially to his children that listen, right? Ogun reminds us that, hey, listen, you are a very fertile person. You're a person that needs to have children. You're a person that needs to establish a family. And with all of that, Ogun begins to remind us of the partnership between Ogun and Chango. A lot of times we talk about the pataki of Ogun and Chango, and Chango took Oya away from Ogun, and this, that, and the other in the war. But on Ogunda Meji, there's a partnership between Ogun and Chango. And so you have to honor the Ochas very much so. And Ogunda Meji, and as a son of Ogun, don't let nobody ever tell you. Well, let me refrain that. In certain Iles, they say, well, the son of Ogun cannot be a Babalao. I don't believe in that. Ogunda Mei is such a sacred sign. Is when Ogun came down from this world, from the Iremoles to an Orisha. You need to be a Babalao. My 2 cents, right? But you got to be careful with your temper. Ogunda Meji and a son of Ogun, your temperament will get you in trouble. Your 0 to 100 will get you in trouble, right? You're a spiritual person in Ogunda Meji, and especially as a son of Ogun, you need to go through those trials, right? And you need to make sure that, as a spiritualist, right, as a person that has that ability, and you begin to go through the rites properly. If you're going to become a Babalao, here are your options. If you're going to go into the room of Ifá, you need to give 4-legged animals, so all the Orishas that complement Ogun through Ocha to hear what they got to say, and then go to Ifá. How you go about doing that, whether it's crowning or whether it's Wawawe, which is just washing your Orishas. There's no feathers. It's 4-legged animals. Let me hear what the Orishas got to say, because I'm Ogun. And not only am I Ogun, but I'm Ogunda Meji. And I am the spiritualist. I'm the one who started all this. I'm the one that the sacrifices to the Orishas when they need 4-legged animals come from. Think about it. Put it all together. Very important. All right. We're going to leave that one alone. All right. What else we got here? Gratitude. Now, Marcus, boy, definitely. Any words on Odù being blah, 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 blah. Continent. Hey, so guess who? Whenever you see letra de año, right, or the letter of the year, or the harvest season, right, when they pull a letter of the year in Africa too, and no different than we do in the U.S. and in the beginning of the new year. So when we talk about Otrupo Meji, here's where we got to kind of focus on for your particular story, or your scenario. When we talk about Otrupo Meji, right, I don't want to necessarily focus on that, but I want to give you some advice. I want you to focus on a sense of your Ikofa, your Awofaka as your foundation, right? And then the letter of the year, it's got to complement that. I'm more focused on how Otrupo Meji relates to your Awofaka Ikofa than anything else. That's going to be your key. Especially because when you look at Otrupo Meji, we talk about the creation of the mountain. We talk about Oke. Oke is accompanied with Obatala. Oke is used with Machokio, right? And Ocha tells us that, hey, our spiritual alignments are necessary in order for us to align our Ori. Are we doing everything that we need to do? Because we understand that in Otrupo Meji, the great flood occurred. Why? Because people didn't align themselves. People didn't believe. People weren't doing what Olodumare told them to do. Right? Otrupo Meji is one of those signs that I love a lot. When I was working on the curriculum for the Your Favorite Babalao Institute that starts July 17th, right? Definitely join if you can. That is something that 100%, right? 100% is relevant, because we talk about that great flood. We talk about the power of Babalu Aye and Oya and Oke, and we talk about, Ogun and Leba. Man, what a beautiful sign. But again, the advice is we need to understand the foundation before we can interpret Otrupo Meji, and we can put Otrupo Meji into the scenario. Hopefully that makes sense. And I'm not trying to divert off of your question, because Otrupo Meji is also, a sign that talks a lot about where consecrations that one gets typically has to be rebuilt to be stronger, right? To complement what you currently got going on. Otrupo Meji is a very relevant sign of the first eclipse of the sun that was provoked, right, by Eshu himself, which tells us that we have to ensure never to be without offerings to our Eshu. Eshu needs to be always, Drupo Meji offered. So if that is a letter of the year that you received, you need to stay on top of your Eshu until that year is over. And you need to be spiritually aligned until that year is over. This is a very tough sign for those that are living, okay? Because it builds a lot of challenges in our life in order to test our temperance, in order to test our character. And we got to be very thoughtful about that. All right. I'm gonna leave you with that one. Guess who? Any advice on any wah? I bet. I bet. Well, let me get back to you on that one, only because I know that one's gonna lead into a deeper conversation and everybody's gonna throw questions. All right, let's see. Let's see. Powerful boom. Boom that shit. Yes, guess who? All right, I'm going back to you, Moyo. You know I got your back 100%, always and forever. Hey, that's one of my members right there. You know what I mean? I gotta take care of her. All right, let's see. When it talks about trying to keep up with this chat. Let's see. Hand of Ifá, boom, boom, boom. Any advice from Omoya Maya? Osogbo, Osarafobe, or Shanti. I got tons of advice, but I already kind of gave you a little bit of advice already, Shanti. Give me 1 minute. Let me see if I get somebody else. This is my Olu Odù. You on point, Baba. All right, well, there you go. Let's see. Ifa's word will always come true. Exactly. Mr. Adams, a little boy, you, Mr. Adams. Hey, thank you. I pulled that sign yesterday. I already said you're welcome on that one, 100%. When it came up, you told me to watch my temper, no guns. Exactly what she said. All right, little boy, you know. And then we got here. Let's see. After going through the rites of Ifa, it is still as imperative to make your Ebo from Ocha. Absolutely. You got to remember, your Ebos and Ocha were pacts that you made. You made pacts with those Orishas, right? And you kind of left those Orishas hanging. They gave you the advice and boom. And it's just not those Eboses, okay? Ochunfo que you got to remember, pata y cabeza. You don't know what that means, you shoot me an email, pata en cabeza, and how we translate Mira de Legume and what we truly need to focus on um, when I mean that, okay? Because some of the advice given to you by Orishas is advice, and some of that is mandatory. And understanding those things is very important for you to propel terrestrially, because this is the domain of Ocha. Right? Ifa is a domain here as well, but it has to complement each other. Just food for thought there, okay? Um, let's see. Greetings, family. Johnny, I haven't seen you in a minute, brother. How you doing, brother? You doing all right? I'm trying to put my email in the chat so you guys have it in case I told you to email me. That way you email me. All right. Gmail.com. Ba, ba, ba. Okay. Gratitudes. No, fortuna, my pleasure. Hey, I'm sorry, Baba. I had to step away for a second. Did you speak on any advice on Elewa? No, I haven't spoken about that particular Elewa just yet. Not for long, no problem. Okay. All right, makes sense. Now, Chunfo, okay. I'm glad it does. All right, so what do we know? What do we know? All right. Ba, 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 da, ba, ba, da, da, ba, 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 ba. Okay, so hey, something that I want to make sure, um, Moyo, the Elegua, I'm trying to understand that path. Are you spelling that right? Are you saying Alawana, or are you saying Abali? Abali, Abali. I'm trying to think of if what you're asking me for, you're gonna make me take out my books. I need to understand that a little bit. But if you have a better standing for that, um, Let me know. I think the spelling is probably what we're kind of missing out on here. So there is an issue, abanuke, right? Now maybe that's what you're looking for. That's one. And that comes from arara. Right? So please let me know if you're referring to abanuke. So it's Abban, right? Ue. Is that the one you're referring to, Moya? Or if not, don't rack your head. Shoot me an email. Let me know, and I'll get with you 100%. Just trying to understand the path a little bit of which one you're referring to. All right. Issue abo. Issue abo. Feel like feel like I don't. You know what? Moya, I'm gonna get back to you. I always tell people if I don't know the answer, I'm not gonna make it up. Right? But the issues that I know, right? The issues that I know, are going to be the issues that I know. Ah, wait a minute. No, 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 no. I'm sorry. The one you're referring to is Elewa. Okay, I'm gonna talk on Elewa. My apologies. My brain had to click for a minute. Right? So it's not an issue, it's an Elewa. Let me ask you this, Moyo. You got that issue. I'm sorry. You have the Elewa, right? Received from Ocha, correct? This is not an issue. This is an Elewa. Okay. All right. That particular Elewa is one that they built for protection. Let me get my book out. I know exactly the one you're talking about. I got my black book of tratados. All right, but I know that the one you're talking about. So this was it's the first one to be called, and a lot of times in a lot of ceremonies in Ocha. This is one that represents the beginning and the ending of the roads, right? So we always say that LAY is opens up the doors, right? But the beginning and the end of those doors, where are they and where they lead to? So a lot of times we consecrate, right? This LAY particularly in order to protect those doors, right? To protect what is to come when we open up those doors of opportunity, because not all doors of opportunity are going to be in that same order, right? So you're 100% correct. Elewa Bale. I appreciate that. I apologize for not. It didn't click on me for a little bit. I'm talking about Ifá and I'm thinking issue, and you're talking Elewa. But the reason why the destination, the beginning and the end of those roads are important for this one, because the reason why in Ocha they always talk about this Orisha first is because this is the one that's actually giving the offering to the Orisha. Right? What a beautiful path to be the one that's going to ensure that that offering gets to where it gets to. But it's an Orisha, it's an Elewa of protection. It's an Elewa that at the end of the day is recognized as the one that receives the aboles for cleaning, interpreting, and ensuring that those things get to the destinations that they get to. But this is an LAY that's very temperamental. This is an LAY you gotta take care of. LAY you gotta constantly, put the palm oil around him. Make sure you have his 3 guavas there. This is an LAY that at one point in time, I promise you, is gonna always ask for his crown. He wants his 3 little knives. He wants his little candies. Because he's a very temperamental Orisha, right? And this is the reason why we always got to make offerings to this Orisha. But hopefully that kind of makes sense more. Okay, guys, with that said, I will receive it with my warriors and my Olokun soon. Oh, no, Buruboya. But now you have a little bit more towards that. But okay, hey guys, I'm already at an hour and 19 minutes. The big goal here is look for the Institute, join the Institute. You want more information? My email address is in there. Subscribe, You know, you want to be a member? Great. I'll give you the first month of the curriculum free to see if you like it. You know, it doesn't matter what membership you pick. But just I want people to be engaged. I want people to learn, right? If you don't understand your foundation, your three signs, your prophecies, let's have a conversation. Let's see how we pull that out. If you want to understand further and you have all the information you need, or even with the limited information, you want to get paperwork to understand your foundation, let us know. This is all about learning, educating yourself, and empowering you to be better. Okay. So with that said, Iburu, Iboya Bucheche Cyberland, it was my pleasure. And as always, you guys have a blessed one. Iburu, Iboya Bucheche. Yes, baby.